Yeah, welcome back to the MC65 FM podcast. We are diving into deep Microsoft technology with the architects, MEPs, and industry experts shaping the future of the enterprise IT. Today's guest has spent more than 2 decades helping organizations get the most out of their Microsoft technologies, from the early days of SharePoint development to today's AI-powered workplaces. He has seen multiple waves of transformation, and now he's believing the biggest and one has only just begun, I think. And yeah, his current passion is Microsoft 365 Copilot agent development through consulting, architecture work, and educational content on YouTube. He helping organization understand the future isn't just chatting with AI, it's building intelligent agents and actually works alongside employees. Today, we are exploring Agent 365, Microsoft growing agents ecosystem. We talk about implementation strategies, governance, architecture, and where enterprise AI is heading over the next several years. So, Steve, welcome to the MC65 podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Can you tell us, for the people who don't know you, a little bit about yourself and how was your, journey into Microsoft ecosystem?
I started with Microsoft technologies in probably the late '90s, like straight out of college, just learning, NT4 server and all that kind of stuff. And I've bounced around between kind of the networking side of things and application administration and development, just all throughout my entire career because I kind of like all the aspects of of the Microsoft technologies or really any technologies. But I definitely gravitated a lot more towards Microsoft and really liked SharePoint when I first saw it, and I think it was SharePoint Portal Server 2003. It was really early in the life of SharePoint, and actually started as a developer. So, did a lot of development with and really got a passion for a lot of these collaboration tools. Of course, several years ago, AI started to come out and be kind of a thing for enterprises, and started kind of like with what everyone else did. Just you go to ChatGPT and you're just talking to it, you're asking questions, and you don't really know how to do it. You don't know what a prompt is. You're just using it the way you would think to use it. And of course, over time, you start to learn more about prompts and a lot of that stuff, and then you start to hear about some of these agents, and now you can build custom versions of AI, and they could be like really good at doing, particular things. And then you start to find some of these use cases to build out an agent to start to save you time. And that's I use agents more than a lot of other types of AI, or certainly more than Copilot chat, I would say, because I there's a lot of processes that I'll do both as a content creator, as a consultant, across a number of different roles that I will always be using agents for something. It helps me save a lot of time, and I've really gotten into the agent ecosystem, no code, low code, pro code, all of that stuff. I kind of live and breathe that every single day at my job at Quisitive.
Yeah, also. Um, what will you say made the agent development so much more interesting than traditional Copilot prompting?
Because it scratched my itch for development. I was a developer, but well before college, back in the BBS days, and I was writing, let's see, Pascal and so a couple other languages for bulletin board systems, if you remember those from the dial-up days. This was pre-internet. I've always liked writing code. I've liked learning different languages, and because you're creating something from scratch. So I'm not that much of a creative person. I'm certainly not an artistic person, but I know how to think through things logically. I know how to order micro tasks into a larger process to accomplish a big goal. And so agents really fit right into that. And so I guess that's a long-winded version of of the answer.
Yeah, yeah. So for people the most are familiar with OpenAI or Copilot, um, yeah, they think that's a prompting tool. But what is Microsoft 365 Copilot agent?
So if you think about what M365 Copilot is, it is just a personal assistant. It is there to help you find information faster across all of M365. It's there to help you in general ways. It's if you've heard of the phrase a jack of all trades, master of none, well, the I would say M365 Copilot is the jack of all trades. It can do a lot of things sort of well. And that goes the same for ChatGPT. It goes the same for Claude Chat. It's fairly good at a lot of things. It's never really great at any one of those things, though, because it's very broad.
Mm,
The agent is the opposite of that. It's not designed to do everything under the sun. It's designed to do one thing and it's designed to do it exceptionally well because you're going to teach this agent what it needs to know. You're going to be providing, if you think prompts can get long, instructions for agents can get a whole lot longer. And usually in the Microsoft world, you have about 8,000 characters and I usually recommend about using almost all of those things because you're going to teach it everything it needs to know about how to do this one job it needs to do. It should not do anything else but that one process, that one task. That way you you put blinders on that agent. It's not thinking about anything else except for that one thing. So that's
mm,
kind of the opposite of what Copilot is, and why those 2 complement each other very well.
mm. And when we think about, or how do you think about, is an agent more like a software? It's more like an automation. It's more like an employee, or is it something entirely different?
It is depending on the agent, it could be any of those things, and that's part of the evolution that we've seen with agents. First, they started out with simple tasks. Maybe it was, uh, creating a particular type of document, and it was a little bit more of an automation or maybe a blend of automation and assistant, but uh, it was there for that one thing. We later saw agents evolve it more into automations, and we see that with certainly with the pro code side, but also with something like Copilot Studio, where now you can have an agent that can trigger a flow, or a flow could trigger an agent. And and then so now it's able to start to interact with other systems, write files, and do more system integration level tasks. And more recently, I think it was November of last year at Ignite, Microsoft introduced Agent 365 and this notion of AI teammates. So now instead of agents, which had been previously more of like a piece of software, an agent, you deploy an agent to an organization and all users just simply use it. It's there. It's kind of like any other app that might show up inside Teams. Everyone uses the same copy. AI teammates kind of change that. Now they're acting like people. They don't require someone to go talk to it. It's not just sitting there waiting for someone to talk to it. It can do things on its own. It can react to changes in data, in other systems. And so they act more like an actual AI uh, being, but it's still an agent on the back end. There's just a lot more sophistication that has been brought into this agent technology.
Mm. I think what when we build an agent, or we architecture an agent, what are the main components to make up an agent?
So that's a great question. It's actually 3 things, 3 core things that really make up an agent. One is the instructions. I've touched on that, and that is essentially the very, very long prompt that teaches this agent, which is a blank slate to start with.
So
It teaches it what
teaches
it needs to know
stuff.
about its job. You tell it what its role is, how it should be responding to people, what tasks it's going to be asked to help with or what processes, all the steps of that process. You're going to go into great detail. I usually tell people Treat an agent like it's a 5-year-old. You're going to spell out every single thing that it needs to know on how to do its job. And if you do that, do it well, that agent's going to know and respond exactly the way you want it to. So the instructions are definitely the most important thing. It's make or break for the agent. Then you've got the knowledge. What knowledge does this agent have access to, if any, to do its job? Not every agent actually needs to be grounded on organizational knowledge. A lot of times, just the large language model itself, it will provide enough knowledge for this. And then there's the tool set. So, what tools does this agent have access to? Does it have access to find M365 data? Does it have access to find? Uh, Maybe it's just SharePoint. Maybe it's just OneDrive. Maybe there's a ServiceNow integration, and this agent is going to be able to connect into ServiceNow and pull ticket information in the case of maybe a help desk agent. So, this is more into the system integration side, but it's giving the agent different tools in its tool belt so that when it needs to, based on your instructions, it does have the ability to talk to other systems, to call specialized tools, whatever the need is, and it can use those tools to accomplish its job, which again is you're defining in the agent instructions. So really those three things, instructions, knowledge, and tools are the core things that make up an agent.
Yeah. I think a little bit, yeah, before agents come, we have, if we would like to work with different tools, we have, yeah, work with Microsoft Graph. Does this also play a role?
Mhm.
The Microsoft Graph, is this also important part?
Graph is that so yes, graph would really fall under the knowledge and potentially tools because there's so much there to graph. Behind the scenes, when Copilot is going to go get knowledge from Microsoft 365, it's going to be calling Graph, or if it's getting knowledge from Azure, almost any entry point into the Microsoft Knowledge Network is always going through Graph. So that any like behind the scenes, you'll be using Graph, unless you're getting into more advanced agents,
Would-
specifically through something like Procode. You don't have to worry too much about the Graph entry point because you're presented with friendlier um, terminology like SharePoint or OneDrive or Teams or things like that. But it's always using Graph behind the scenes. In addition, suppose you've got an agent that is doing some work inside of Azure, then it could be calling Graph to provision resources inside Azure. So you can have tools that way as well. And there's a number of different ways to define tools. But yes, Graph, if you're having an agent interact with Microsoft 365 in any way, it's always going to be leveraging Graph as its doorway into that world.
mm, and you said knowledge, and I think about knowledge. Um, how important is for the agents that we have structured data?
Structured, so it depends. If you want I mean, what I usually the way I approach this is if an agent has a need for structured data, then I will incorporate that. But one of the interesting things about, um, and this is getting more into the data science side, I believe, and that's definitely not my expertise, but the ability to index content has changed with the evolution of AI because in the past we would have a traditional like Google type search where it was based off of keywords. Well, with AI, we had a semantic index that came about where now all of this data that is unstructured, along with any metadata, so things like your custom columns inside SharePoint and things like that, all of that stuff gets indexed into one large index that was that's specifically tuned for AI. So you may start with structured data in maybe it's in Azure SQL or maybe it's in SharePoint, but they'll usually get indexed into some sort of an AI friendly index so that AI can find this quickly because you certainly don't want well, you typically don't want AI executing SQL statements on your SQL server. That's usually not desirable. The DBAs would just freak out if there was uh, such that kind of a behavior, and a large language model could just execute whatever SQL it wanted. Usually, there is an index involved. So Copilot specifically can leverage your structured data. It's gotten a lot better. Now, when it first came out, uh, basically, its ability to use custom metadata columns was, like, non-existent in SharePoint, and that was the first thing that a lot of people noticed. That was around the time that I became a Microsoft MVP as well, and I heard a lot of MVPs, complaining about this as well because Microsoft teaches us that they've always taught us, use metadata columns in SharePoint. This is not just an online file share. This is not what we used to do in the Maps Drive days. You need metadata columns. You need to enrich your data. It's not just the document. It's now the metadata that goes along with that. Um, but yeah, Copilot came out and it couldn't even read any of that stuff. It has gotten better, significantly better in the last 12 months, I would say, with being able to read some of that data, all the metadata that accompanies the actual data, the actual documents, for instance.
And the agent builder, is it like more like I think a Pro Code, Visual Basic Studios thing, or is it also in citizen development environment like Power Platforms, I don't know, Power Pages or Power Automate?
That is the interesting thing about how Microsoft introduced agents. They made them accessible for everyone, regardless of their skill level. On one end of the spectrum, you've got SharePoint agents, probably the newest type of agent that was introduced is SharePoint agents, where all you had to do is provide agent instructions. Like, at a core level, that's it. You maybe if you wanna go a little bit more get a little bit fancier, you could say you just want an agent that, with these instructions, it's grounded just on this library. You've got Agent Builder, which gets a little bit fancier. You start to get some tools now. You have Copilot Studio, which has definitely had some very significant changes recently. But that had more complexity, and now you're inside Power Platform, which has its own set of challenges that you deal with. Then you've got Pro Code on the highest difficulty, I would say, and, you have to do everything yourself. So and I know that recently I've heard Microsoft say that you should be able to create the agent you want with the technology that you want. They want it they want it accessible to everyone. They want to enable people to create their own agents even if they don't have the same skill set as someone else. Certainly as a pro developer, they don't want you to have a pro developer skill set. So there's they do their best to to bring parity to all of those different experiences so you're not limited while also not getting overwhelmed with the things. If someone is brand new to AI in general, they're just starting to learn things, they don't need to be in Copilot Studio where they've got all these settings, all these things. There's too much there that would overwhelm them. So trying to find that balance is, I think, what Microsoft is currently faced with how to enable someone without overwhelming them.
Mm. And you have before you have say there's integration for ServiceNow. Um, is it possible to have? Is it only with working with integrations, or is it only in the Microsoft ecosystem, or can I use also, I don't know, other things like, I don't know, Google Maps or something to work in this agent?
So The the agent ecosystem in general in the world, it has settled on a number of different protocols and ways to communicate that you can have an agent talk to let's say you have an agent in the Copilot world. You can have it talk to a Google Vertex agent or an Amazon Bedrock agent because they'll all be implementing the same languages or protocols, things like agent to agent or MCP, model context protocol. They'll be talking those same languages. So that's that's where I'm seeing a lot of customers preferring certain technologies. A lot of customers I talk to prefer the Anthropic ecosystem. They want to use the Anthropic API, they want to use the Claude models, or they want to use the Google infrastructure because of the agent building experience there. But they also still want the Microsoft grounding and other things like that. So you could use any technology you really want to, and you would still be leveraging a lot of the common things that we've talked about so far. Things like graph, if you want to get the graph data, if you want to leverage the semantic index that is provided from through graph, you can do all that. So you could have the agent live where you want, grounded in using the data that you want, even if it's not on the Microsoft platform.
Mm, okay. That's really interesting. That's gives a lot of capabilities, I think. So, um, when people think about building an agent ecosystem, what should they do before they start with building?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question, because that is where most companies will immediately start incorrectly. They will start with just turning on AI, and they've already made the first mistake because I talked about the semantic index. Most of these platform providers now understand semantic indexes. They are incredibly well at finding data. That's why everyone started to love ChatGPT when it first came out, and I usually go back to that example because for me personally, that was my first time really hearing about an AI chat interface and being able to talk to about things, find information, because it could find anything. I didn't have to worry about what keywords to use. But the problem with business data now is if you turn on AI, even if it's just, M365 Copilot, users are going to be able to find data incredibly well, including the data they're not supposed to have access to, but they do because people have had such bad practices historically within the M365 world or other environments with sharing information. A lot of people would just share information with everyone in the company because it made it easier. They didn't have to deal with permission issues anymore because if everything was wide open, then great. If no one knew that this one particular SharePoint site had HR data with a salary spreadsheet, no one knew about it. Well, no one could find it, right? Only the people who were supposed to have access would have that link, and easy, no problem. And with Microsoft Graph Search, like the original kind of SharePoint search, that was it wasn't too much of a challenge. Like if someone worked hard, they might be able to find that. But with AI, again, everything became easy. You didn't have to know the name of the file. You didn't have to know any keywords. If you
Mm,
just described, I want the spreadsheet with all of the salaries for everyone, AI just simply found it. So the biggest thing that organizations have to do well before they want to turn on AI is they've got to govern their data better. They have to look at all of the over permission files, sites, libraries, everything. They've got to make sure that everything is secured correctly. They have to make sure that if there's a confidential file, that they're leveraging something like Microsoft Purview to label that file as confidential and have additional protections on that. Things like making sure it can't be shared outside the organization, it can't be printed, whatever those protections are, you need to make sure that that data is secured with all of the proper methods because at least with M365 Copilot, it's aware of those protections and it's going to honor those protections. I always tell people Purview will always win out, but that's only if you're leveraging it. So starting by securing your whole environment, that's always going to be the first step to AI because whatever weaknesses you have, AI will expose it to all of your users because it will make everything so easy to find for
Mm,
good or for bad.
mm. And can you little tell us how on an I don't know a real project without or personal or without saying the name of the company, but how did you build it? Can you take us through step by step a little bit?
So, like an example agent,
Yeah.
yeah. So, there's one that I'm building right now. This is usually one of the absolute best use cases. It is an intranet agent. Most companies, I would say, have
Sure.
intranets. Not all of them, but most of them. And so you've got a whole bunch of different SharePoint sites organized into a hub network, and you've got information scattered all throughout there. And if you're like a typical customer, it usually is hard for anyone to find anything on there because someone may be looking in one site for a file, but it's in a whole different site. So a lot of people have to, dig around, constantly find stuff. They end up emailing someone, and an hour later, they finally find the page or the file they're looking for. Well, the agent kind of solves that because I could have an agent that is an expert at that intranet. It's
Oh,
got instructions on exactly what it's supposed to do. It's given only the knowledge it needs to be able to do that. In this case, it's grounded on all of the intranet sites.
mm,
And it doesn't even need tools in this case. It's just there to help people find the information they're looking for. So if someone wants to start with a chat first experience on their intranet, they can. If they want to just keep browsing for things because maybe they know exactly where to find the information, then they start that way.
mm,
So the one I'm thinking of in particular, I'm currently working with them, and they're not a big fan of the Copilot sidecar in SharePoint. It's not quite that obvious that it's there. A lot of users who are certainly new to Copilot, but definitely new to agents, they don't know if, that it's there. And so
mm,
they wanted a different way. Now, if you look on a lot of internet sites, there's so many websites out there right now that have that little chat window on the bottom right corner, and pretty much everyone recognizes that as, okay, there's an AI assistant here. So I can just chat with this instead. So this company wanted that experience.
mm,
So that's not provided. Like there is no mechanism. Now, Microsoft actually recently rolled out what they're well, they keep changing the name. It was the Knowledge Agent. Now, I think that the current name is AI in SharePoint. They might rename it again. It's hard to keep up with the rebrands with Microsoft, but they wanted something like that. So I used SharePoint Framework and created a little chat window thing. They could just click on this icon. It would pop up the chat interface. They can talk with it. They can close it when they're done with it. Really, really simple. So it was a leverage. And then they didn't want to go into the pro code side because you have way different costs. You have more infrastructure. It's a more complex solution. And it isn't necessarily even needed for something as simple of a use case as this. So we used Copilot Studio to build the agent, and we do have pro code for the SharePoint piece because for that level of customization, we did have to create TypeScript for that. So yeah, they're currently testing that right now. We're making some tweaks to styling because if we're presenting a custom chat window, so they get to tweak this all they want. If they want it wider, if they want it taller, all these different behaviors you can tweak and it's still just accessing the same backend agent. So that's one of the easiest and best use cases to start to realize value in an organization with leveraging AI is something that most users will be going to at least once or twice a week, and that's an intranet and just letting AI help users find content faster and get back to work.
mm. And when let's say you have built an MVP, a minimal viable product, and um, and you will roll this out in a company. What exactly have you do for it, and what are, yeah, say, misconceptions company have on a rollout?
So this is really where organization change management comes in, where this isn't just something you'll just turn on and people will just notice. A lot of people, they'll never notice it. A lot of people in this case, like the intranet case, maybe they've given up on ever finding anything on the intranet because it's always been too difficult. So getting the message out for like assuming you've gone through a pilot test and the people in that pilot program have like they love it. They're done with the iterations, they're done with any sort of changes. It is ready, it's gone public. That's when you really want to start a communication campaign, an awareness campaign to make sure people understand this thing is now here and that this can help them find that that document on the internet. It can help them find that policy that HR put out on travel or vacation time, whatever that is and and have a way to get some feedback from those users. Have maybe they're using Viva Engage, and there could be a community um, for feedback on this particular agent, or for AI feedback or Copilot feedback. Having a communication loop though is important. Having an awareness campaign is definitely important because if you roll out AI, if you're going to be spending money for this. Um, whether that's the time for someone to develop this agent or um, ongoing costs in Azure. If it's something like a pro code agent, you get Azure resources; they're always running. You're gonna spend money implementing AI of any kind, and if your users don't ever find out that it's even there, then you've just wasted money. And maybe by the time they realize it, you've already got to make updates because the large language models have changed or whatever. And you've got to restart testing. So you're going to have an ongoing cost there to even maintain that AI. And so, yeah, if the users don't even know if it's there, it's you've already failed, in my opinion.
Mm. And I think a little bit where I have a little bit problem with is I think it's was really good explained. And but we have so much tools now, for me to 3D to build something like when I work with AI in Microsoft. We have the Copilot Studio, we have the Copilot Agent Builder, and also we have Azure AI Foundry. When should I use what?
So that's definitely a really good question. I will always tell people start with the simplest thing first. If you're not experienced enough building agents to know which tools don't even have the capabilities that your agent would need, always start with the SharePoint agent. See if you can get that to work. If you can't, start graduating up. It there are going to be some things you'll learn quickly, like if you need to integrate with systems, with external systems, then a lot of these tools will be immediately out. But the you always want to go with the simplest technology that you can, because if you start with Foundry on every single agent, you're going to have a tremendous amount of technical debt, and it'll be much more expensive to maintain. You'll be leveraging less of your M365 Copilot benefits as well, because you don't use the M365 large language model. If you're building in Foundry, you're calling models yourself. You're calling custom deployed models. Um, so like everything is much harder when you start inside Foundry, and it's not necessary. Um, it dep- and there's a lot more decisions. There's a lot of technical decisions you would be making in something like Foundry. Like, do you just leverage the model and build using something like the M365 Agents SDK or the Agent 365 SDK or the Teams SDK? There's three different ones that would result in deploying an application into Azure App Service and just leveraging a model in Foundry. Or there's the Foundry Agent Service, something I hear a lot more people talking about. And that has some simplistic advantages. Honestly, that's depending on if you're creating a simpler agent inside Foundry, it'll look and feel a lot more like Agent Builder actually. Or if you're building a code first model or code first agent, then there's a lot more complexity to it there, and then you give up some crucial things that they can't integrate quite as well with, an environment like Teams, for instance, compared to what more of a Copilot specific tool set would let you do.
Yeah, awesome. I think what I think it's also I think I don't know. You heard a lot of these horror stories. The agent delete all. I don't know content from a project or something.
Mhm.
Uh, how do you test an agent that you can feel? I don't know that you are in a safe environment that's just not happening at something bad.
I hear the same concern out of a lot of customers that I talk to. They hear all these same horror stories. An agent has just deleted all of their data, or it's gone and done things that it's not supposed to do. And it usually comes down to and the other thing is I hear them a lot more now than I have in maybe 2 years ago. And well, for one of those is there's an agent harness and then there's an agent. And what when something kind of goes rogue and it's just deleting all these other things, a lot of times that's not a regular agent. That's something similar to OpenClaw, where it's an environment that is can call one or create on the fly one or more agents and start doing a lot of things. If you've heard of Claude Code, that's more of an agent harness. Claude Cowork, Copilot Cowork, OpenClaw. There's a number of these different things that are designed to be incredibly powerful. Agents are not designed to do that because that's more of like an individual component versus an entire ecosystem or framework. But in general, you want to work on the least privilege principle. So whatever the agent needs, it should have the ability to do just that and nothing more. If it's going to be reading SharePoint files, there is no reason whatsoever it should have write access to SharePoint files. Now, a lot of this you may not be able to control or you wouldn't previously because a lot of these agents, certainly in the Microsoft world, would operate based off of whatever privileges the end user had. So if the end user had write access to SharePoint, then so did the agent. But if they didn't, then it could. If the user didn't have access to read HR files in a protected library, well, the agent wouldn't have it even if the agent was told to use that library because it would still use the end user permission. Agent 365 kind of came along the scene late last year as well and started to introduce more of that governance layer on top so that maybe even if the user did have access to write to something, it could be an additional layer on top that if the agent did have permission based on the user's permission to write to SharePoint, Agent 365 could just say, no, you're not going to do that. So you definitely should be approaching agent development or building, whatever term you want to use there, you should be approaching that with the same sort of mindset that you would give to a user that you're creating in the environment. Do they need right access to this thing? If they don't, then they shouldn't have it. Give them just the permissions that they need to do their job and nothing more.
Mm. It's like a zero trust.
Exactly, zero trust. That's another thing that I hear a lot about when I talk to some of the security experts that I work with, or have certainly AI discussions in a security context. That's always the thing. If you're applying this kind of uh, thinking and process to your users, you should be doing the same thing with agents as well. And if you're not a developer and a developer is building out an agent, and they're saying, I need these permissions, you should be questioning that and you should be making sure of what permissions you're allowing that agent to get from Microsoft Graph, because that's really where you're going to be stopping that the over permissioning and oversharing and all of a sudden those horror stories aren't happening to you because you've taken the proper precautions.
Mm. Yeah, and I think also it's like yeah, a company thinking. I think they need an Uncle Ben who advised Peter Parker with great power comes great responsibility. um,
Exactly.
yeah, and so a little bit what I hear of the audience governance, security, responsible AI topics, and um, what security concerns come up most often from your experience?
The usually it is that horror story that, "Hey, I heard agents can just go, do all these things that it's not supposed to do." Like, if we granted access to read SharePoint, all of a sudden it can write to SharePoint. Those are usually the misconceptions I'm addressing almost on a daily basis, to be honest. So, just and it's almost always with a customer who is either asking about how to leverage AI or they're starting to, and they're starting to hear some of these stories. So usually clearing up misconceptions is the number one thing that I hear about and I talk about, just to help someone understand, like, the backstory that they're not hearing, with that horror story. Because these things are incredibly safe if you are designing them, honestly, with common sense.
Mm. Um, I think the agent, I think from the user perspective, do the agent only know what the user already has access to, or is it, I don't know, can I grant other access to an agent as me as user who developed it?
It really depends on your use case. In some cases, in a lot of cases, I would say, you do want the agent to use whatever the user has permission to. Maybe it's more of a productivity assistant. Maybe it's something that's going to help them do their job. Um, and so it only needs the same permissions as the user. In other scenarios, you may want the agent to have access to return information from a resource the user does not have access to. Um, I hear about all this, but this a lot when if you're pulling information from Azure SQL. Well, a lot of companies don't want to grant end users access to Azure SQL, so they want the agent to kind of be the demarc point where the agent has access to return SQL information to the user, like on the user's behalf. So that could be a scenario. There's other scenarios that we're starting to see now with things like Microsoft Scout, where the agent may have its own level of permission. This is getting a lot more into the AI teammate scenario, where the agent has its own set of resources. The user has their own set of resources and permissions, and they're just working with each other. So there's a lot of those different cases. It's always going to boil down to what is the use case for the agent, and what is the security model that makes sense. Should it be only ever using the user's permissions, or does the agent need its own set of permissions? And with all of these different scenarios, things just like a basic chat agent or an automation type agent where you're integrated with systems, or the fully autonomous agent that is an AI teammate sort of scenario. Those will all determine the security model that you want to adopt for this. And for each of the use cases, there's usually just one right answer between those different security models, which is the right one for you.
Yeah, uh, you said also something interesting where I have say all the three tools, but yeah, what is the for me? What is the different from the agent builder to the scouts?
So there's one architectural difference.
Hmm.
Agent Builder and SharePoint agents, actually half of Copilot Studio, all three will fall into what Microsoft calls a declarative agent, where you don't have to write any code. You don't have to deal with any of the things like what model to use or what orchestrator to use. It's kind of the agent in easy mode. They hide all the complex stuff from you. It runs on top of M365 Copilot
Hmm.
and generally will at that point now require a Copilot license. Those are kind of the easy ones. Then you look at something like Scout. Um, well, before I get to Scout, the other type of agent that we've talked about for years now is a custom engine agent. That is what you're creating when you're creating with Foundry, if you're using the Microsoft 365 Agents Toolkit, which is my preference. You're creating a custom engine agent. That's when you're defining what model to use, what orchestrator you want to use. And that's when you hear words like uh, the agent framework or LangChain or LangGraph, semantic kernel. You hear about all those different types of things. Those are different orchestrators, kind of the brains behind the scenes almost. And that's when you start to get into more of the autonomous agents. Now, Scout is an autonomous agent, but they call it an autopilot. It's one of their newest things they had announced, I believe, at Build this year, the 2026 Build conference. And that one is, from what I have seen, because I haven't got my hands on it, I don't know internally how it works, but I do know it uses the GitHub Copilot SDK. I believe this would fall under an agent harness type of architecture. So this is more similar to OpenClaw than it is to Agent Builder, because this is going to be able to do work on its own. It will usually have um actually I'm not sure on the permission model on that. It seems like it's going to be user level permission. So whatever permissions I have access to, it would have access to. But it's more of an agent harness uh, mixed with uh, uh, an autonomous agent. So this is really the newest class of thing, and I'm starting to see a lot of cases where a custom agent may not be the right answer anymore because we have some of these harnesses like Copilot Cowork or Scout, or I would what would come right after Scout. The thing I'm personally waiting for a lot right now is building custom autopilots, because I think you're going to be seeing a lot more agents that are using Markdown and not code. You'll be able to have the same power as a custom engine agent where those things can do whatever it is you want to do. But of course, they'll only do what you program it to be able to do. But you'll be able to do that without being a Python developer or a TypeScript developer or a C# developer. You'll be using Markdown, because that's why things like OpenClaw have gotten so powerful and popular. Why people love Claude Code. They love all the co-work type products using natural language and using Markdown files, and that is it. And even a beginner user to AI could quickly understand how to work with something like that, because they don't even have to know how to build these skills. That's one of the newest buzzwords now, is the skills. Anthropic had them, now Copilot's got them across a number of different experiences. But you can just talk with AI and it'll build the skill for you. So the the floor to get involved with some of these products has gotten so low now, and the in my mind, the bar that you have to the threshold you have to cross to actually be able to say, "Yes, we actually need a pro code agent for this." It's gotten a lot higher. It's gotten I see a lot more cases where you're gonna be building autopilots, you're gonna be building, um, skills inside cowork, and it's gonna save a lot of money on development and be much easier to maintain with a less technical skill set.
And I will come. This was a good explanation. But I will come back to the governance and security topic. Um, as yeah, I say an agent builder or maker, um, how many experience need I in additional tools like Entra, Peer View, where we have also Defender and so on.
If you're an agent builder, an agent maker, and you're not a pro code developer, you shouldn't be worried about any of those things. That should be IT's responsibility. Um, as if you're in the no code or low code experience, your agent will always be subject to those types of things. Now, if you're a pro developer, you're going to have a lot more concerns because you will, depending on how you're architecting your agent, depending on the way you're creating knowledge sources, maybe you're indexing content from SharePoint into a custom Azure AI search index. All of a sudden, you could end up stripping out all the permissions, uh, and storing just the raw knowledge in there, the raw data, and then all of a sudden your agent is returning information that it shouldn't be returning to a particular user, but you made the mistake in architecting your knowledge source in a way that it exposed that security issue. Um, same with purview labeling. There's a lot of things that you could really screw up. If you're working in the foundry world without the proper skill set, without knowledge of things like purview data labeling and information protection, Defender as well. We're seeing a lot of these capabilities in Defender, Entra, and Purview all get beefed up specifically for agents. That was something that Agent 365 really relies on. I'd say the core of the Agent 365 functionality is in those three products and the upgrades that they're getting. Things like conditional access policies that are specific to agents. And without at least awareness of what policies exist and what policies are about to get rolled out, your agent can go from working to broken in minutes, depending on when things change in that environment that your agent runs in.
Yeah. Um, there are two topics. I think they're also related to the security topic, but are also a little bit future topics. But um, what or did you think we are moving towards an autonomous agent area?
I think there'll always be a mixture of simple agents, and complex agents, and then agent harnesses because, again, it'll always depend on the use case. If you don't need an autonomous agent, you don't then you shouldn't be trying to force that type of a solution. If a SharePoint agent will work, if that does what you need to, you shouldn't even be thinking about Copilot Studio and much less Foundry. You should go with the simplest technology. It's gonna be the easiest to maintain. Certainly in the case of a SharePoint agent, a site owner could be maintaining that and not IT. So you always wanna go with the simplest type of technology, uh, and not try and over engineer things. So I there will always have simple AI use cases as well as complex. And so I think that all of the different types of agents we have now, they're gonna continue. We will be seeing more of scout type things, but they'll be there for certain use cases and not others. Scout certainly seems like a very general purpose type of solution. So going back to the thing I said at the beginning of this episode, if it's sort of good at everything, it's never going to be great at any one of those things. Now, skills can kind of maybe blur that line or that rule a little bit. But there'll always be use cases where you need AI to do one thing and do it exceptionally well. And for that, you can't really use a general purpose type agent. Now, harnesses, again, little different, but you'll always have a need for agents because you want something to do only one thing and nothing else.
Okay. Um, and there it's I think a lot of YouTube videos there they say, okay, I built an entry company with multi-agent systems. What role will multi-agent systems play?
I see that playing a role with very complex processes where you What I usually see people doing is they break down a complex process into individual components. I think most people are used to doing that just to understand what this process entails.
Mm.
Each of these simpler components would be an agent because, again, you want that agent to do one thing and do it incredibly well. If it needs to do something sort of unrelated, it should be calling a different agent to do that one thing. So now you start to build out a team of agents that are working together. Each one is an expert in its own job and nothing more. And that's really what those multi-agent architectures are about. Maybe you could get one agent to do all of it. It wouldn't do it that well. That's for sure because they do need to be very, very focused. Otherwise, you end up with a general purpose agent or a general purpose solution like M365 Copilot. So um, I see those being used a lot more for system integrations, back end processing, more back end work than other things. So usually, a lot of those highly complex systems, especially ones that are touching third party systems or back end systems, different Azure uh, resources and things like that. Those are usually the best use cases for a multi agent architecture.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, we're a little bit running out of time, so let's jump in the rapid fire round. I'll say something and you give a quick answer. So one Microsoft feature you, yeah, or everybody should learn.
One Microsoft feature everyone should be using,
Yeah.
I definitely say M365 Copilot, period. Like
Okay.
that opens the door to everything else.
Is there one underrated co-pilot capability?
Loop. Well, I would say, let me rephrase that. Copilot Pages,
Mm,
which is a mixture of Copilot and Loop.
mm, okay. Um, what's the most exciting announcement from Microsoft recently?
Autopilots by far. Autopilots is it opens up a brand new world for agent development and the level of the level of work compared to the level of effort to get that work.
One AI myth you would love to eliminate.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, one AI myth you love to eliminate.
Oh, um, that AI can just do anything it wants to, regardless of what you allow it to do.
Mm. Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio?
VS Code all day,
SharePoint or Dataverse?
SharePoint all day.
Uh, best drink during developed Copilot agent.
If it's off the clock, it's a Bloody Mary. If it's on the clock, it's coffee.
um, what's the best thing to be on the Microsoft MVP program?
The best thing, I would say being plugged in with all the individual product teams, especially the ones that matter to me the most, Copilot and Copilot extensibility, being able to give that direct feedback and know all of these super duper top secret features that are about to come out so that I can start getting my head around it before customers hear about it.
Mm. And if you weren't in IT, what career would you prefer?
Um, I think it'd be fun to be a doctor. Maybe I'm just watching too many medical shows though.
And what was the best advice you ever received?
To work my butt off and get whatever it is I want.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I've done for over 20 years now, and, I've certainly applied it a lot more in the past few years, and all of a sudden, I became a Microsoft MVP, and, there's a lot of things happening for me right now, and I have no plans on stopping. I just grind. I'm a grinder.
yeah, awesome. Thank you. So then my closing question is what should the listeners take away from this talk when it's one thing?
The one thing is that agents cannot just go rogue if you have the proper guardrails in place, the proper security, and your data protected. Uh, but making sure that whatever you do with AI, you always think about security and governance first.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, then thank you, Steve, for joining me today. It was fantastic exploring Microsoft 365, Copilot agents, Agent 365, and the future of enterprise AI with you. Yeah, for everyone listening, be sure connect with Steve. You find his links in the show notes. Also, check out his YouTube channel, and also he is on the host on the MC65 show. That's also a good source. And yeah, I think if you're interested in his work, you find all the links. And yeah, if you enjoy today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the MC65 podcast. And yeah, leave us a review and share this episode with someone exploring Microsoft Copilot. You until next time, keep learning, keep building, and we'll see you in the next episode on the MC65 podcast. So thank you, Steve, for being here with me.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. It's always great to talk with you, and we'll talk again soon.
Goodbye. Ciao.
Thanks, everyone.